The stars looked different from up here, Daniel Harper thought as he stood near the large window of the exploration ship. He had been in space for 6 months now, and still, the view never got old. Earth was visible in the distance, a small blue dot that held everything humanity had ever known. Daniel was the commander of this mission, and his crew of 47 people trusted him to bring them home safely. The ship was called Horizon's Edge, and it was one of the newest vessels humanity had built. They could travel faster than light now, something that would have seemed impossible just 50 years ago. The year was 2087, and humans were finally reaching out to touch other star systems. This mission was supposed to be simple. They would travel to a system called Kepler 442, take some readings, and come back home. Nothing dangerous, nothing complicated. Lisa Bennett sat at her station monitoring communications. She was young, only 24, but she was the best at what she did. She could pick up signals from millions of miles away and keep the ship connected to Earth and the other colonies. Mars had 3 million people living on it now. Europa and Titan each had research stations. Humanity was spreading out, slowly but surely. Captain Gregory Stone walked onto the bridge carrying a cup of coffee. He was older than Daniel, with gray hair and tired eyes. He had been in space for most of his life and had seen humanity grow from a single planet species to something more. He nodded at Daniel and took his seat. Everything changed in an instant. The lights on the ship flickered. Every screen went dark for a moment, then came back showing error messages. Lisa screamed as her console exploded with sparks, and she fell backward out of her chair. Daniel rushed to help her while alarms started blaring throughout the ship. "What's happening?" Gregory shouted over the noise. Kevin Ross, the lead scientist, was already working at his station, his fingers flying over the controls. His face went pale as he looked at the data. "Sir, you need to see this." Daniel left Lisa with the medical team and moved to Kevin's station. What he saw on the screen made no sense. The readings showed that Earth was gone. Not destroyed, not damaged, just gone. Vanished. The moon was gone too. Mars was gone. Everything within a huge sphere of space that extended past Mars had simply disappeared. "That's impossible," Gregory said, but his voice shook. "Get it on the main screen," Daniel ordered. The large view screen flickered to life, showing the space where Earth should have been. There was nothing there. Just empty blackness and distant stars. No debris, no explosion, no sign that anything had ever existed in that spot. 8 billion people gone in a blink. The bridge went silent except for the sound of someone crying softly. Daniel felt his legs go weak, but he forced himself to stand straight. He was the commander. These people needed him to be strong. "Turn us around," he said quietly. "Take us back now." The ship turned and accelerated toward where Earth had been. As they got closer, Kevin's instruments started picking up something strange. There was a faint distortion in space, like a scar or a wound in reality itself. It was almost invisible, but it was there. "Can we scan it?" Daniel asked. "I'm trying," Kevin replied. "The readings are strange. It's like space itself was torn open and then sealed shut, but there's no energy signature, no radiation, nothing that would explain what happened." They spent 3 days scanning the area, searching desperately for any clue. Other ships started arriving, other vessels that had been far enough away to survive whatever had happened. The mining station on Ceres called in. They had survived too. In total, fewer than 3,000 humans remained alive, scattered across a few ships and one small asteroid base. Daniel called a meeting with the other ship commanders. They gathered in a virtual conference room, their faces appearing on screens around him. Everyone looked shocked, scared, angry. Some were crying. "We need to figure out what happened," Daniel said, "and we need to survive. Those are our 2 priorities." Captain Helen Brooks, commanding a cargo vessel, spoke up. "Survive how? Earth had all our food production, all our manufacturing. We have maybe 6 months of supplies if we're lucky. Ceres has mining equipment and water ice," another captain said. "We can use that." "We need to work together," Daniel insisted. "Every ship, every person. We're all that's left of humanity." Over the following weeks they organized. Ships docked with Ceres. They started setting up hydroponic gardens and recycling systems. It was hard work, and many people were too depressed to help at first. They had lost families, friends, entire worlds, but slowly they began to function again. Kevin never stopped studying the anomaly. He worked 18-hour days running simulation after simulation. One night Daniel found him asleep at his station, screens full of equations and data. You need to rest, Daniel said gently, shaking him awake. Kevin rubbed his eyes. I think I know what happened. Not how, but what. Tell me. Earth wasn't destroyed. The quantum signatures suggest it was displaced, removed from normal spacetime. It's still out there somewhere, just not here. Not in our dimension or timeline or whatever you want to call it. Can we get it back? Kevin shook his head slowly. I don't know. I don't even know if the people are still alive. But whatever did this, it had power beyond anything we can imagine. This wasn't natural. Something or someone moved an entire planet. Daniel looked out the window at the empty space where Earth should have been. Then we need to be ready. If something can take Earth away, it might come back. And we need to be stronger when it does. The survivors started calling themselves the diaspora, a word that meant scattered or spread out. It fit. They were the remnants of humanity, trying to hold on in a suddenly much emptier universe. Lisa recovered from her injuries and went back to work. She kept sending signals toward the anomaly, hoping against hope that someone would answer. No one ever did. The scar in space remained silent, keeping its secrets. Months turned into years. The settlement on Ceres grew. Children were born. The first generation to never know Earth except through stories and old videos. They adapted because they had no choice. Humanity had always been good at surviving, even when survival seemed impossible. But every day someone would look at the empty space where home used to be and wonder. What had happened to Earth? Where had it gone? And most importantly, would they ever see it again? The questions hung in the air like ghosts, unanswered and haunting. 400 years had passed since Earth disappeared. The humans who survived that day were long dead, their stories passed down through generations. The year was now 2487, and humanity looked very different than it had before. The diaspora had grown from 3,000 survivors to nearly 50 million people spread across 12 star systems. They lived on space stations, orbital habitats, and a few planets that could support human life with the right equipment. They had never found another Earth, but they had learned to make homes wherever they went. Children grew up in artificial gravity, learning about forests and oceans from old videos and books. Real trees were rare and precious. Most food came from vast hydroponic farms that floated in space. People were taller now. Their bones adapted to lower gravity. Their skin was paler from living under artificial lights. But they were still human, still carrying the memory of a blue planet they had never seen. Admiral Patricia Cole commanded the Sol Defense Fleet, a collection of 30 ships that guarded humanity's birthplace. She was 53 years old and had spent her entire career in this system. Some people thought she was wasting her time, watching over an empty grave. But Patricia believed differently. The anomaly was still there, a faint scar in space that her instruments could barely detect. It had not changed in 4 centuries. Scientists had studied it from every angle, but they were no closer to understanding it than Kevin Ross had been all those years ago. Earth was gone, and that was that. Patricia sat in her command chair reviewing reports. Ship maintenance, crew schedules, supply requests, all the boring work that kept a fleet running. She had joined the military to see action, to protect humanity from threats. Instead, she spent her days babysitting an empty patch of space. Her second in command, Commander Felix Grant, walked onto the bridge. He was younger, maybe 30, with bright eyes and too much energy. "Morning, Admiral." "Same old nothing to report." "Good," Patricia replied. "I like boring." But that morning would not stay boring for long. Danny Morrison sat at the sensor station half asleep. Monitoring the anomaly was the dullest job in the fleet. Nothing ever happened. Nothing ever changed. He had been staring at the same readings for 3 years now. He was thinking about requesting a transfer when his screen suddenly lit up with alerts. "Admiral," Danny shouted, sitting up straight. "The anomaly is changing." Patricia was out of her chair instantly. "Show me." The main screen displayed the sensor data. The anomaly was growing brighter, more active. Energy readings were spiking across every spectrum. Space itself seemed to be rippling around the old scar. "Get me fleet-wide communications," Patricia ordered. "All ships to battle stations. Science vessels, get your instruments pointed at that thing. I want to know what's happening." Across the Sol system, ships began moving into position. Scientists who had spent their careers studying the anomaly scrambled to their stations. This was the moment they had been waiting for, the moment many thought would never come. The anomaly grew brighter over the next 6 hours. Ships from across human space began arriving, jumping into the system to witness whatever was about to happen. News spread through the diaspora like wildfire. After 400 years, something was finally changing. Patricia stood on her bridge watching the screens. Her heart pounded in her chest. She had dreamed of this moment but had never really believed it would happen. What if Earth came back? What if the people were still alive? What if this was humanity's chance to go home? Energy spike, Danny called out. It's enormous. Off the scale. The view screen showed space itself tearing open. Light poured out bright and terrible. Every ship's instruments went crazy with readings. And then, in a flash that could be seen across the solar system, Earth appeared. The planet materialized exactly where it had been 400 years ago. The moon appeared beside it. Satellites and space stations that had vanished reappeared in their orbits. For a moment, everyone just stared in stunned silence. Run scans, Patricia said, her voice shaking. I want to know everything. The initial readings came back quickly and they were wrong. All wrong. Earth's night side should have been covered in lights from cities. There should have been radio signals, television broadcasts, satellite communications. But there was nothing. The planet was dark and silent. No electromagnetic emissions, Danny reported. No radio traffic, no power signatures. It's like the whole planet is shut down. Life signs? Patricia asked, scanning now. A long pause. Admiral, I'm not reading any human life signs. No heat signatures from cities, no movement, nothing. Patricia felt her stomach drop. Earth had come back, but it was dead. 8 billion people, just gone. Get me a landing team ready, she ordered. We're going down there. Commander Felix spoke up. Admiral, shouldn't we wait? Run more scans? We don't know what we're dealing with. We've waited 400 years, Patricia replied. I'm not waiting another day. Prep a shuttle. Over the next few hours, ships moved closer to Earth. More scans confirmed the worst fears. The planet appeared intact. Cities still standing, but there were no people. No animals either, as far as they could tell. The whole world was empty, but there was something else. The scanners picked up a strange substance covering much of the planet's surface. It appeared to be crystalline, but it had properties that did not make sense. It seemed partially organic, partially technological. Nothing in human records matched it. Dr. Susan Palmer, the fleet's chief scientist, studied the readings. This is not natural. Whatever this crystalline substance is, it was placed there deliberately, and it's giving off a faint energy signature. Is it dangerous? Patricia asked, unknown. But Admiral, I would recommend extreme caution. We have no idea what this is or what it does. Patricia nodded. She was scared. More scared than she had ever been in her life. But they had to know. They had to understand what had happened to Earth and its people. The landing team assembled in the shuttle bay. Patricia chose experienced people, scientists, and soldiers who could handle themselves in unknown situations. She wanted to go herself, but Felix talked her out of it. An admiral belonged on her ship, commanding the fleet. Captain Amy Foster would lead the landing team. She was one of the best pilots in the fleet and had survived 3 combat missions against pirates. If anyone could handle whatever was down there, it was her. Be careful, Patricia told her before she left. At the first sign of danger, you get out. Understood? Amy nodded. Yes, ma'am. We'll be fine. The shuttle launched and descended toward Earth. Patricia watched on the screens as it entered the atmosphere and headed for what had been New York City. The city appeared intact from orbit, but up close they would see the truth. As the shuttle disappeared below the clouds, Patricia whispered a prayer to a god she was not sure she believed in. Humanity had lost Earth once. She could not bear to lose it again, even if it was only a corpse coming home. The shuttle touched down in what had once been Central Park in New York City. Captain Amy Foster looked out the window and felt her breath catch in her throat. The city stood just as it had been left 400 years ago, but everything was covered in a layer of crystalline growth that shimmered in the sunlight. Suits on, Amy ordered. We do not touch anything until we know it is safe. Her team of 6 put on their environmental suits and checked their equipment. Lucas Grant, the engineer, carried scanning devices. Claire Patterson, the biologist, had sample containers. The others were security, armed and ready for anything. They opened the shuttle door and stepped onto Earth for the first time in 4 centuries. The ground crunched under their boots. The crystalline substance covered the grass, the trees, the pathways. Everything had a strange, glowing quality to it, as if the crystal itself was producing light. It is beautiful, Claire whispered. It is creepy, Lucas replied. running his scanner over the nearest tree. These readings make no sense. The crystal is organic and inorganic at the same time. It is like nothing I have ever seen. They moved carefully through the park toward the city streets. Buildings rose around them, their windows dark. Cars sat abandoned in the middle of roads covered in crystal. A bicycle leaned against a lamppost, frozen in time. "Where is everyone?" one of the security officers asked. "That is what we are here to find out," Amy said. They entered a building, an old apartment complex. The door was unlocked. Inside, the furniture was all in place. Pictures hung on walls. A coffee cup sat on a table, still half full, the liquid now crystallized. It looked like people had just stepped out for a moment and never came back. Claire examined the crystal growth more closely. "It is warm. Can you feel that?" "It is giving off heat," Lucas nodded. "And there is something else. Put your hand near it, but do not touch." Claire moved her gloved hand close to the crystal on the wall. She gasped. "It is pulsing, like a heartbeat." "Confirmed," Lucas said, checking his scanner. "There is a rhythm to the energy emissions. 60 beats per minute, the same as a human heart rate." Amy felt a chill run down her spine. This was not just some alien growth. This was something deliberate, something that had been designed. But for what purpose? They continued searching the building and found more of the same. Empty apartments, frozen lives, everything covered in crystal. On the 5th floor, Claire found something that made her call the others immediately. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a wall. Someone had written a message there, scratched into the plaster before the crystal had covered it. The words were barely visible beneath the growth, but they could be read. "They are watching." The shadows move. "Help us, who wrote this?" Lucas asked. "I do not know," Claire replied, but they were scared. Over the next several days, more teams landed on Earth. They spread across the planet, exploring different cities and locations. Everywhere they found the same thing. Empty cities, crystalline growth, and an eerie silence that seemed to press down on everything. Jake Morrison led a team in London. He was a young lieutenant, only 25, but he had good instincts. As his team moved through the streets, he kept feeling like something was watching them. He would turn quickly, trying to catch whatever it was, but there was never anything there. "Do you feel that?" he asked his teammate, Sergeant Kelly Brooks. "Feel what?" "Like we are being watched." Kelly looked around nervously. "Now that you mention it, yes. I thought it was just me." They entered what had been a hospital. The building was in perfect condition, but again, no people. In the records room, they found something interesting. Medical files from the days before Earth disappeared. Kelly read through them. "Listen to this. Multiple patients reporting visual hallucinations, seeing shadows that move on their own, shapes in peripheral vision that vanish when looked at directly. The doctors thought it was mass hysteria." "Was it?" Jake asked. "I do not know, but there are hundreds of reports, all in the last week before the disappearance." Jake felt the hair on the back of his neck stand up, shadows that moved on their own. He thought about the feeling of being watched. "We should report this." They sent their findings back to the fleet. Other teams started finding similar reports. All over the world in the final days before Earth vanished, people had reported seeing things, shadows, shapes, things that should not be there. On the 7th day, Commander Nathan Price was leading a team in what had been Paris. They were searching the Louvre Museum when Nathan's radio crackled to life. "Commander, you need to see this," one of his team members called. In the Egyptian wing, Nathan hurried to the location. His team stood around a display case that had been smashed open. Inside had been an ancient artifact, but it was gone now. More interesting was what had been left behind. A message written in the crystal itself, glowing with inner light. The words were in English. "We saved you. The darkness came. We hid you away, but now you have called it back." "What does that mean?" someone asked. "I have no idea," Nathan replied. "But I want this documented and sent to Fleet Command immediately." An hour later, Nathan's team was exploring the catacombs beneath the city. The tunnels were dark, their lights cutting through the gloom. The crystal was thicker down here, almost forming walls in some places. "Commander," one of his team said nervously, "I think we should head back." "Just a little further," Nathan replied. "I want to see where this leads." They rounded a corner and stopped. Ahead of them, the crystal glowed brighter, pulsing faster. And in the light, they could see shapes, shadows that moved independently of any light source. They flowed across the walls like liquid darkness, dozens of them all moving toward the team. "Fall back," Nathan shouted. "Everyone back to the surface." Now they ran. Behind them, the shadows followed, moving impossibly fast. Nathan could hear his team's panicked breathing over the radio. They reached the stairs and climbed, taking them two at a time. Nathan was the last one up. As he emerged into the museum, he turned to look back. The shadows were at the bottom of the stairs, but they were not following anymore. They just watched if shadows could watch. "Everyone accounted for?" Nathan asked. His team counted off. Everyone was there. They had all made it out. "Let's get back to the shuttle," Nathan said. "Something is very wrong here." But when they reached the shuttle, they found it covered in crystal, far more than when they had left it. The growth had spread across the hull, seeping into the engines. It would not fly. Nathan tried the radio. "This is Commander Price requesting immediate extraction." "Our shuttle is compromised," Static answered him. Then slowly words formed, but not from any human voice. It sounded like wind through dead trees, like whispers in an empty room. "You should not have come back. You should have stayed away. Now they will follow you. The shadows will follow you home." The radio went dead. Nathan looked at his team, saw the fear in their eyes. They were trapped on Earth, and something here was very much aware of them. In orbit, Patricia received Nathan's final transmission before his radio went silent. The words chilled her. She ordered an immediate extraction team, but by the time they reached Paris 6 hours later, Nathan and his team were gone. The shuttle sat there covered in crystal, but the people had vanished. Admiral Patricia Cole stared at the reports coming in from Earth and felt a cold dread settling in her chest. Commander Nathan Price and his entire team had vanished without a trace. The extraction team had found their equipment, their weapons, everything except the people themselves. And the crystalline growth had spread to their abandoned shuttle. "Pull everyone back," Patricia ordered. "All teams return to orbit immediately. No one sets foot on Earth until we understand what we are dealing with." But it was already too late. The crystal was spreading. Ships that had landed on Earth and returned to orbit began reporting strange occurrences. Systems failed and restarted on their own. Crew members reported seeing figures in corridors when no one was there, and people were disappearing. Colonel Henry Wells commanded the research vessel Newton. His ship had spent 3 days in Earth's atmosphere collecting samples. Now back in orbit, things were going wrong. Equipment malfunctioned, lights flickered, and the crew was scared. "We have a problem," his chief engineer reported. "The crystal. It's growing in the lower decks." "That's impossible," Henry said. "We decontaminated everything." "Come see for yourself." Henry followed her down to the cargo bay. What he saw made his blood run cold. The crystalline substance had somehow gotten aboard and was spreading across the walls and floor. It glowed with that same inner light, pulsing with that same rhythm. "How did it get here?" Henry demanded. "I don't know, sir, but it's growing fast. At this rate, it'll cover the whole deck in a few hours." Henry ordered the deck sealed and evacuated. But that night, 3 crew members went missing. Security footage showed them walking calmly toward the sealed cargo bay. The doors should have been locked, but they opened anyway. The crew members walked inside, and the doors closed behind them. When Henry sent a security team to investigate, they found the cargo bay completely covered in crystal. The 3 crew members were nowhere to be found. But worse, the crystal had grown. It now covered 2 decks and was still spreading. "We need to abandon ship," someone suggested. "No," Henry said firmly. "We need to understand this. These people are our friends, our family. We find out what happened to them." He ordered his science team to study the crystal. They worked around the clock, taking samples and running tests. What they discovered was incredible and terrifying. Dr. Eric Lane, the lead scientist, called Henry to his lab. His hands were shaking as he pulled up data on his screens. "The crystal is not just a substance," Eric explained. "It's a storage medium, like a computer hard drive but infinitely more complex. And it's storing something." "What is it storing?" Henry asked. "Consciousness. Human consciousness. I found neural patterns embedded in the crystal's structure. Billions of them." Henry felt the room spin. "Are you saying that people are inside the crystal?" "Not their bodies. Their minds. Every person who was on Earth when it disappeared, their consciousness was copied and stored in this network. 8 billion people all preserved inside an alien data structure. Are they alive? Can they think, feel? I don't know. The patterns are stable, not degrading. But whether they're conscious or just stored like files on a computer, I can't tell." Henry looked at the sample of crystal on Eric's desk. Inside that small piece could be hundreds or thousands of human minds. The thought was staggering. What about the people who are disappearing from our ship? Henry asked. I think the crystal is collecting them too, adding them to the network. It's not killing them, it's preserving them. Why? That's what we need to find out. Back on Earth, teams were making more discoveries. Amy Foster's group had found something in what used to be the Pacific Ocean. They sent a submersible down to the Mariana Trench, the deepest part of Earth's oceans. What they found there changed everything. At the bottom of the trench, where no light had ever reached, the crystal grew in massive formations. They looked almost like buildings or structures, organized and deliberate. And in the center of it all was something that did not belong. It was a device of some kind, clearly alien in origin. It hummed with power, sending out pulses of energy that matched the rhythm of the crystal's glow. The device was still active, still working, still doing whatever it had been designed to do. Lieutenant Victoria Adams was piloting the submersible. She carefully positioned it to scan the device. The data that came back was encoded in patterns her computer had never seen before. But slowly her systems began to translate it, finding meaning in the alien mathematics. I'm getting something, Victoria reported. It's a message. The device is broadcasting a message, and what does it say? Amy asked from the surface. Victoria's voice shook as she read the translation. It's a warning. And a history. Let me put it on speaker. The message played, translated into English by their computers. It spoke of beings called the Preservers, an ancient race that had existed for millions of years. They had watched countless civilizations rise and fall. They had seen a threat that moved between galaxies, something that consumed intelligent life. The threat fed on consciousness itself, on the energy patterns that thinking minds produced. It had destroyed thousands of civilizations, leaving behind dead worlds and empty cities. The Preservers called it the Silence because it consumed all thought and sound from its victims. 400 years ago, the Preservers had detected the silence approaching Earth. Humanity was young and had no defense against such a threat. So the Preservers had acted. They removed Earth from normal space, hid it away in a pocket dimension where the silence could not reach it. They had preserved humanity's consciousness in their crystalline network to keep everyone safe. But now, the Preservers' message continued. Humanity had made a terrible mistake. By spreading across 12 star systems and growing their population to 50 million, the diaspora had created a beacon that the silence could detect. The threat was returning, drawn by humanity's expansion. Earth had been returned not as a gift, but as a warning and a rallying point. The Preservers had given humanity their technology, embedded in the crystal network. They had left instructions for how to fight the silence. But they could not fight for humanity. Each species had to stand on its own. The message ended with a choice. Humanity could remain in the crystalline stasis, safe but unchanging, or they could be released to face the coming darkness with full knowledge of what awaited them. How long do we have? Amy asked. Victoria checked her instruments. According to this, the silence is already entering our galaxy. 6 months, maybe less, before it reaches human space. The news spread through the fleet like wildfire. Patricia called an emergency meeting with all the ship commanders and the leaders of the diaspora colonies. They gathered virtually, their faces appearing on screens. We have to make a choice, Patricia said. Stay in hiding or wake up and fight. Fight with what? Someone asked. We've seen what this thing can do. It consumed thousands of civilizations. The Preservers left us weapons, Eric Lane spoke up. I've been studying the crystal. There are blueprints embedded in it, instructions for technology that can protect consciousness from being consumed. It's not perfect, but it's a chance, and if we fail, another voice asked. Then we fail fighting, Patricia said firmly. I did not spend 400 years guarding Earth's grave just to hide when humanity needs to stand up. We wake our people. We learn to use these weapons, and we show the silence what humans are made of. The vote was not unanimous, but it was clear. Humanity would wake up and fight. Patricia sent word to begin the awakening process. One by one, the 8 billion minds preserved in the crystal network would be brought back. The awakening took 3 months, and it was the most incredible thing humanity had ever attempted. The Preservers' technology was complex but surprisingly intuitive once they understood it. The crystal network did not just store consciousness, it could create new bodies, growing them from raw materials using patterns stored in human DNA. One by one, 8 billion people woke up in new bodies, identical to the ones they had lost 400 years ago. They woke confused, frightened, thinking only days had passed since Earth vanished. Patricia watched the reunifications happen, families finding each other again after centuries apart, people from old Earth meeting their descendants from the diaspora, but there was no time for long celebrations. The silence was coming. Commander Sophie Clark took charge of integrating preserver technology into human defensive systems. She was one of the best engineers in the diaspora, someone who could look at alien blueprints and understand them. The technology the preservers had left behind was incredible. They learned to build shields that protected minds instead of bodies. These shields created a kind of interference pattern that made consciousness difficult for the silence to detect and consume. They learned to build weapons that could disrupt the enemy's ability to feed, devices that created noise in the quantum fields where thought energy existed. But the technology was incomplete. The preservers had given them tools but not a complete instruction manual. Humanity would have to figure out the rest on their own. General Marcus Flynn coordinated the defense. He was old Earth military, a man who had been a colonel when Earth disappeared and now woke to find himself in a future where everything had changed. But war was war, and he understood it better than most. "We have 13 inhabited systems," Marcus explained at the strategy meeting. "The silence will come for all of them. We cannot defend everything, so we have to be smart about it." "What do you recommend?" Patricia asked. "We concentrate our forces. Make the silence come to us instead of spreading out to find us. We turn Earth into a fortress and dare it to attack." "You want to use Earth as bait?" someone asked. "I want to use Earth as a weapon," Marcus replied. "The crystal network is still here, still active. 8 billion people just woke up, but their consciousness patterns are still stored in the network. We can use that. Make Earth shine so bright with human thought that the silence cannot ignore it." It was a risky plan, but it was the best they had. Over the next 2 months, humanity transformed Earth into the greatest stronghold ever built. Ships from all 13 systems converged on the homeworld. Weapons platforms were constructed in orbit. The crystal network was modified and expanded, linked to the shield generators and weapons. Captain Owen Mitchell commanded the forward scout fleet, a group of fast ships that watched the edges of human space for any sign of the enemy. They did not have to wait long. 6 months after Earth's return, Owen's sensors detected something wrong with space itself. "It is not a ship," he reported back to command. "It is like a wave, a wall of darkness spreading between the stars. Everything it touches goes silent. No radio, no light, nothing. How fast is it moving?" Patricia asked. "Fast. It will reach the Kepler system in 3 days." Kepler 442 was where humanity's first diaspora colony had been established, where people had rebuilt civilization after Earth vanished. Now it stood in the path of an ancient evil that had destroyed thousands of worlds. "Evacuate the system," Patricia ordered. "Everyone back to Earth, we make our stand here." The evacuation was chaotic. Millions of people fleeing their homes, packed into ships racing toward Earth. Some did not make it. Owen watched as the darkness overtook slower vessels. They did not explode or burn. They just stopped, all lights going out, all signals ending. The ships floated dead in space, their crews consumed by something that left no mark. The silence reached Earth's orbit 7 days later. Patricia stood on her bridge and watched it come. It was not what she expected. There were no ships, no weapons, no army. Just a wave of pure darkness that seemed to drink in all light and warmth. "Shields up," she ordered. "All weapons ready." "This is it." The darkness rolled over the defensive line. Ships opened fire with conventional weapons, but bullets and missiles passed through the silence without effect. It was not physical matter that could be destroyed. It was something else, something that existed in a different way. Then the new weapons activated, the ones based on preserver technology. They fired beams of organized consciousness, patterns of thought made solid through quantum manipulation. Where these beams hit the darkness, it recoiled, pulling back as if in pain. "It is working," someone shouted, but the celebration was short-lived. The silence adapted quickly. It began to flow around the weapons, seeking gaps in the defense. And where it touched a ship's shields, it began to drain them, feeding on the energy that protected the crew inside. On Earth's surface, billions of people felt the battle happening above. They could sense the silence through the crystal network, feel its terrible hunger. It wanted them, wanted their thoughts and dreams and memories. It wanted to consume everything that made them human. Dr. Alan Foster had been studying human creativity since he woke up. He was a psychologist from old Earth who had specialized in how people thought and created. Now he made a discovery that changed everything. Consciousness creates energy, he explained to Patricia over the communication channel, but not all consciousness is the same. When people are afraid or asleep, they produce steady, predictable patterns. The silence can consume those easily, but when people create, when they imagine and dream and make art, the patterns become chaotic and bright. The silence cannot process that kind of energy. What are you saying? Patricia asked. I am saying we need to get creative. Every person on Earth, we need them to imagine, to create, to be as brilliantly human as possible. Make the silence choke on us. It sounded insane, but they had no better options. The word went out across Earth and all the surviving ships. People began to create. Artists painted and sculpted. Musicians composed symphonies. Writers wrote stories. Scientists developed wild theories. Children imagined impossible things. And through the crystal network, all that creative energy amplified and combined. Earth began to shine in frequencies the silence had never encountered. Every burst of imagination was like a weapon. Every new idea a flash of light in the darkness. Lieutenant Maya Torres volunteered to link directly with the crystal network, to become a conduit for humanity's collective creativity. It was dangerous. The neural load could kill her. But she did it anyway. Maya's consciousness expanded across the network, touching billions of minds. She could feel every person on Earth, feel their hopes and fears and dreams. She could feel the silence too, pressing down from above, trying to consume them all. But she could also feel something else. The silence was not evil or cruel. It was just old and hungry and alone. It had been feeding on other civilizations for so long that it had forgotten any other way to exist. It was a predator because it knew nothing else. Maya reached out to it, not with fear or weapons, but with understanding. She showed it what humanity was, what it meant to create instead of consume. She showed it art and music and love and laughter. She showed it that consciousness could generate its own energy, that thought could create instead of just exist. The silence hesitated. For the first time in millions of years, it encountered something it could not simply consume. Humanity was too chaotic, too creative, too brilliantly alive, and Maya was offering it something it had never had before, a choice. For 3 days, the darkness hung over Earth while the galaxy held its breath. Ships floated in space, their weapons ready but not firing. People on Earth continued to create, pouring their imagination into the crystal network, making themselves impossible to consume. Then slowly, the silence began to change. The darkness started to develop colors, subtle at first but growing stronger. Patterns emerged, like thoughts forming in a mind that had never learned to think. The silence was learning to dream. It was not a quick process. The entity was ancient and vast, and changing required time. But humanity waited, continuing to create, continuing to shine. They had offered the silence a different path, and incredibly it was taking it. When the transformation was complete, the silence was no longer silent. It had become something new, something that could generate its own patterns of consciousness instead of consuming others. It was no longer a predator but a guardian, choosing to protect the galaxy it had once hunted. Daniel Harper, still alive after 4 centuries in suspended animation, stood at an observation window and looked at Earth. The planet gleamed with blue and green, but now threads of crystalline light wove through the atmosphere, connecting Earth to something vast and strange in orbit above. The silence, transformed into what humans began calling the shepherd, had chosen to stay near Earth. It would watch over humanity and help them spread the gift they had given it to other species across the galaxy. Patricia joined Daniel at the window. She looked old and tired but satisfied. We did it. We actually did it. Humans are good at the impossible, Daniel replied. We always have been. Earth had vanished and returned, bringing shadows with it. But those shadows had become light, and in that light humanity found not an